another of the episodes is on the Road Warriors, and I've seen some of the reenactment footage, which you guys have been dying to do.
Oh yeah, we posted some stuff. Yeah,
and this is another example of, and obviously Animal is still with us, but Hawk's story was kind of tragic in its own right, and after having spent so much time with those guys, they were over so strong for such a short period of time. Then, unfortunately, with the changes in WCW where they fit like a glove, they went to the WWF. I don't think were ever presented to their full ability. They were never the dominant force that they were for those first 5 years as the Road Warriors or whatever. And then after that, they were so strong. The legacy is still there. But, Hawk's story, obviously, I haven't seen a screener on this one either, but Hawk's story, makes that thing go around after their, active days as a team were over with. And that had to be fun doing the reenactment, but, getting into, Hawk's issues and vices and et cetera. And what a great guy he was. But, that was another one I'm going to be looking forward to.
Doing the interviews for the Road Warrior episode, speaking with people who were really close to Hawk, we never quite seen such a reaction in a way that, like, so many of our subjects were very emotional talking about Hawk. Like, all the guys we talked about started crying when he was, like, brought up. Even something that, like, his brother said that was really powerful was that he never saw his brother as Hawk. He only saw him as Mike. And when you hear, like, how he, like, touched so many people, it's pretty amazing, because we've only really seen just the character of Hawk, where he's just super energetic and, like, crazy over the top, and to hear from people about, like, just how, like, kind he was and affectionate he was to his friends. That was a side we never, I wasn't really quite expecting to see.
Yeah, it's really like a story of like, brotherhood, and, like, your brothers on the road, and then what, especially for Animal, for Joe, like, the experience of a fallen brother, and that whole thing, and obviously gets into, Hawk's demons and those types of things, but it also just explores so much of that, like, relationship and that companionship that you have. And especially with all these guys coming from the same place, and, or most of them coming kind of from the same area. And I have to throw this in, is like, it's also kind of a hometown episode for me, because I'm from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And a lot of the places these guys, went around and bounced at and, bartended at and worked out at are places I definitely, seen growing up. And so for me, it was kind of just like going back to Minnesota, and we actually decided to shoot the entire episode in Minnesota. The whole thing is shot in Minnesota. It's the only episode we've ever done where it's in one place, because we brought everybody to Minnesota to kind of, like, and then, to kind of just reconnect and, talking to, like, obviously Joe's in it. You have Nikita's in it. Scott Norton's in it. Paul Ellering's obviously in it. And Hawk's brothers are in it. And then also, like, Eddie Sharkey's in it, which is awesome to be able to talk to him.
Cool.
Is he still blind as a bat without his glasses, Eddie Sharkey?
I would assume, but he's a cool dude. I mean, I couldn't believe this. We were in his apartment, and I don't know, like, the subject of, like, Ribera jackets came up, and I was like, oh, like, talking about how, like, someday I hope to go to Tokyo and check it out, be the ultimate wrestling fan. And he's like, oh, I think I got one of those jackets over here. And then he gave me his Ribera jacket.
Oh my
Just
God.
like out of nowhere. Just like, here you go. And I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, I can't accept this. And he's like, no, I want you to have it. And he just, like, gave me this, like, amazing 1980s, I'm guessing, like, Ribera jacket, which I treasure now and will keep safe for the rest of my life. But the one thing I wanted to say, and Jason, you should talk about this, is the Road Warriors. This is also a huge kind of, this is like us, like, Road Warriors are a big deal to us, in terms of, like, kids growing up. And and like how cool they were, you know? And so for us, it's like the opportunity to kind of live out that fantasy a little bit, you know? So you should talk about that, right? I mean,
oh no, big time. Like I think ever since we like came up with the concept of Dark Side of the Ring, we always thought like in our trailer there would be like an image of a backlit Hawk and Animal with their spikes on, and it's just you just see the streams of light going through it. So we fantasize about that like ever since we came up with the concept. And so yeah, in a lot of ways for us growing up, they were like real life action figures. It's kind of crazy to say, but just their design and the aesthetic of them were just the most amazing looking like action figures. And then now like to really like, it's like in some way it's almost kind of like getting to know the person behind my favorite action figure. And you know, and like Joe, like Animal's like identity is kind of is largely like, you know, the Road Warriors are a part of his like identity, and with Hawk being gone and you're losing your companion with that, it's like how do you
maintain
still
that,
move on? Yeah, like how do you move on with that identity? And like it's that's like that was the real heart of it all, I think.
Well, I was also just going to throw on top of that too, just like backing up to, you know, us being fans of the Road Warriors. I really challenge anybody like to show me something cooler than the Road Warriors at their peak entering a goddamn arena with Black Sabbath playing. There's nothing cooler than that. There's nothing
I can tell you
tougher and cooler than that.
I can tell you from firsthand recollection, not only was the pop was, as Mick Foley said one time, was Hegstrandish in its intensity and Laurinaitis-like in its volume.
Wow.
But
amazing.
also, yeah, he's incredible. But just the sight, we would get goosebumps. And the Midnight Express had to work with the Road Warriors in not only their real hometown of Minneapolis, Minnesota, but their gimmick hometown of Chicago, Illinois. Yeah. And it wasn't like they were pricks. I've said many times how the Warriors always sold for the Midnight. They knew we were going to do everything we could to make them look like $1 million and get the gimmick over. And they didn't mind selling for the racket because they knew it was loaded, all that stuff. They were great to work with in that aspect. But in the early years when they were still very excited and you would hear that rush, they would come to the ring, and Dennis, especially because Dennis was the first, you know, a member of the first combination of the Midnight that had to face him. Dennis would look at us and say, "We're about to get our fucking asses kicked." Because we believed it, because they believed it, and they did it in a working way. But my God, it was, you know, it was an atmosphere that you can't find anymore because it was superheroes coming into the building.
No, yeah, that's just, yeah, I don't think that'll be ever, that feeling of like that will be replicated. Just of like, especially when you look at it in Japan too, just like how close the audience is to the action, and like when those guys hit, you know, and they come out in the C's part, you know, kind of like Brody. But when you know, when you just mix that, well, with Brody was the Immigrant Song, which is so cool, you know, and then with, you know, obviously the Road Warriors is Black Sabbath. It's just the best mixture of like. Yeah. Just this intense, insane visual out of a movie, out of like, you know, just way comic book, like way farther out. So we also just wanted this episode. Yes, it deals with like tragic themes that our show explores, but it's also just like a love letter and like a puff piece on like the Road Warriors because they're so cool.